Welcome, fellow tax professionals. In this course, we're going to be discussing the key issue of who is the proper party to file the offer and compromise application packet. We're going to provide the general rule on how to determine who is the proper party, but then we're also going to give examples of married taxpayers. We're going to have married taxpayers who owe exact same tax. Then we're going to have married taxpayers who owe different taxes. And then we're going to conclude with married taxpayers who owe some of the same taxes, but also some separate tax. I hope you enjoy the course. The offer and compromise process begins with the submission of the offer packet to the IRS. But this begs the question of who should file the offer and compromise application. The proper party must file Form 656, or the application could be returned to the taxpayer as unprocessable. The general rule is a separate Form 656 should be filed for each entity owing tax that is seeking relief. That is, there should only be as many Form 656s submitted as there are entities. An entity is the individual or business that is assessed the tax liability. An exception is made for two taxpayers who jointly owe the exact same tax liability. They may submit a joint offer and compromise on a single Form 656. Filing an improper Form 656 can have catastrophic results for the taxpayer and malpractice for the tax professional. The IRS can deem the Form 656 compromise offer unprocessable. An offer deemed unprocessable is returned to the taxpayer and the application will not be processed. Instead, the application will be closed. A taxpayer will not receive a refund of the application fee or a refund of the offer down payment when an offer is returned as unprocessable. So knowing who should file Form 656 is essential for client happiness. Now let's explore specific fact examples to help clarify the general rule that there should only be as many Form 656s submitted as there are entities. A married taxpayer can file an individual offer and compromise on that taxpayer's own. An individual taxpayer does not need the approval or authorization of the taxpayer's spouse. If a taxpayer's spouse or ex-spouse has a joint tax debt and the taxpayer's spouse or ex-spouse does not want to be part of the offer and compromise, then the taxpayer on his or her own may submit a Form 656 to compromise his or her responsibility for the joint tax debt. Two married taxpayers can file a joint offer in compromise when the taxpayers owe exactly the same joint liability. The key is that the taxpayers must owe exactly the same joint liability and no separate liability, no exceptions to the rule. A common example would be a married couple who filed Form 1040s as married filing jointly for the tax years with unpaid tax liability. In that case, only one Form 656 is required. Married taxpayers who owe joint and separate liabilities are required to file two Form 656s when they are both seeking to discharge the tax liabilities. Two married taxpayers cannot file a joint offer and compromise when the taxpayers owe joint tax liability and then either spouse is or both spouses are individually responsible for separate tax debt liability. An example could be a spouse owes tax liability from a tax assessed individually before the couple were married and owes additional tax assessed jointly during the marriage. In that case, each spouse would need to submit a separate Form 656 if they desired tax relief. The first Form 656 lists all of the first spouse's joint and separate tax liability, and the second Form 656 lists all of the second spouse's joint and separate liability. An individual who is either the sole owner or partial owner of a corporation cannot combine on one Form 656 the individual taxpayer's liability with the corporation's separate tax liability. Instead, each tax liability is treated separately. That individual taxpayer can compromise the individual's tax liability by filing Form 656 listing only the individual taxpayer's tax liability. If the corporation also seeks a compromise, the corporation must file a separate Form 656, listing only the corporation's separate tax liability. Thank you for listening to this video, and please spread the word to family and friends that Do-It-Yourself Offer and Compromise Academy is available to help taxpayers find solutions to crushing IRS-backed taxes. The music for this video was provided by www.bensound.com. You can contact the Academy at its contact page at www.diycompromiseacademy.com. Enjoy the online course and keep on learning.